Humble apologies.
Malaysia's Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, is one of Asia's most recognisable leaders. Seen as a campaigner for democracy, justice and equality, it took decades for him to reach the top job. On the way, he was beaten by police and twice jailed on charges that were widely regarded as politically motivated.
I was imprisoned first by Manet, then by Najib. But I said, look, I don't harbor that bitterness because I think it is a disease.
Finally sworn into power in November 2022, the country was still recovering from the billions of dollars stolen in one of the world's biggest financial scandals, 1MDB.
A number of corrupt 1MDB officials treated this public trust as a personal bank account.
Why this obsession with this man who is now in prison? For God's sake, he is in prison.
Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia.
This year, as Malaysia heads up the regional power bloc ASEAN, Anwar's challenges have grown, from dealing with Trump's tariffs to cross-border persecution. In a wide-ranging interview with 101 East, we ask Anwar Ibrahim the hard questions about his prime ministership of Malaysia and his 2025 chairmanship of ASEAN. Prime Minister, thank you for talking with Al Jazeera's 101 East. What's your number one priority for ASEAN this year?
We've been quite cohesive. I think we need to strengthen that bond together. In this changing geopolitical environment, regional grouping is essential. The issue is the focus. The focus is intra-trade investments and to take a common position vis-à-vis the big powers and the neighbors. We have maintained excellent relations with our neighbors. We've been engaging very closely and frequently, meetings and phones, and most of the issues we resolve it through just personal contacts and relations.
As you say, the world order is changing at the moment, particularly with the new Trump administration and their new tariff policy. What are you looking to actually lessen the impact?
Well, Malaysia grew essentially as a trading nation. So tariffs do and certainly have some adverse or negative impact. Now, if we can get the ASEAN understanding cohesiveness together, then I think in a way we may reduce slightly the impact. The other advantage, of course, Malaysia in particular in ASEAN maintains the principle of centrality, which means we continue to have excellent relations with China, with India, South Africa, Brazil, taking sort of a more pragmatic approach. Whilst America, of course, is the largest trading partner and largest investor into Malaysia. So any tariff would also adversely impact on the American companies here.
We understand that in the region, amongst ASEAN countries, transnational repression has become a serious concern. Well, that brings me perhaps to a case that happened in Malaysia last year, and that was the deportation of a domestic worker, Nuon Thoeun, back to Cambodia. She had a valid passport, she had a work permit. To all intents and purposes, she was a legitimate, legal migrant worker in this country. But she was deported back to Cambodia and is now in jail. How did that happen?
Well, this is the turf of the Home Affairs Ministry. They briefed us on the call for extradition by the authorities in Cambodia. We did engage and asked repeatedly for explanation, but within ASEAN, that sort of understanding remains. That if it is deemed to be related to some activity that we cannot defend in terms of the law, then we will have to extradite.
But Prime Minister, it wasn't difficult to see that this was not a matter of law. This was a matter of human rights. This domestic worker had worked in Malaysia for 10 years. She posted some criticism of Hun Sen on her Facebook page and was deported and jailed.
But that's the process. I mean, any prisoner,
Yes, but she was a legal worker here, and it was a clear example of transnational repression.
but the point is, we can't take the risk, but the risk will be, affecting even bilateral relations. But, we have to go back to the specific case. We have to establish the case. If we are convinced, the authorities here, then we send them back.
So
if we're
what-
not convinced, we delay.
So what
even
were
in this
her
case,
offences?
No,
What
I
were
wouldn't
you
know. I
told?
wouldn't know. You don't ask for, the 34 million people here in Malaysia. You ask a specific case. I wouldn't know.
But this
what
Prime
I
Minister-
know is there was a request for extradition by the Cambodian authorities, and both the police, the immigration, and the legal department under the Home Affairs Ministry then made their recommendations. I did communicate with the Prime Minister. That much I did.
To Hun Manet or?
To Manet.
Hun Manet. And
Yes.
what did you say to Hun Manet?
No, of course I said we were concerned. He knows, of course, they know my position and my background. But of course, then they said we have given all the evidence and have reduced all the evidence to your Home Affairs Ministry.
It made headlines internationally, this particular case, which was damaging to Malaysia and its reputation and ASEAN. Did you not
No, it
want
should
to
not.
know?
It should
or
not,
did
because
you-
if we have reasons to question, when we continue questioning. If we have reason to delay, we delay. But I think it's paramount to also respect their laws. Otherwise, how do we work and make ASEAN as a cohesive force?
But there doesn't seem to be any transparency here. What did she do wrong? She was charged with incitement in Cambodia, but she had a Facebook page with followers. It's not a major threat.
Well,
to a
that was not
government.
there's not the only issue raised by the Cambodian authority. It's not a question whether I agree or not. It's purely a legal issue in Cambodia. I have my personal views, because we are dealing with a foreigner here, we're not dealing with a Malaysian.
So even though you knew what was happening and you were satisfied that she
Not
should be
to say
deported,
satisfied. I should say that evidence shown that a crime or an offence committed in the country, and I think there is reason to agree to the request by the Cambodian authorities.
but then why wasn't
I wouldn't do that here.
Sorry?
I wouldn't do that to my citizens. We have different set of laws. And we didn't just concede. We did not. And that's why I say it's a protracted discussion. It went up to the minister, up to the Prime Minister, which means that it was an easy decision even for us.
Do you regret personally that you led a country that deported this woman back to be jailed? In a sense, Malaysia is being complicit in Cambodia's
what was given to
transnational
us,
repression.
the undertaking given to us was that they go through the due process in Cambodia. I would suggest, of course, they must follow the due process.
But given what we know about Cambodia, it is becoming increasingly repressive, and the judicial system is used as a weapon.
I don't honestly accept this crap, particularly, from the now what's happening in the West, in the United States, for people to say and be so condescending about the system. Let them move. This is an aftermath of the Khmer Rouge and what they're doing in Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, in the States, that people do respect. There is democracy deficit. There's deficit in terms of humanitarian values and engagement. But we start here, at home. I don't impose things on other countries.
But are these the values of all Cambodians because the opposition party was banned at a stage when they were almost going to win an election. This is the viewpoint of
we've
Hun Sen.
extended our discussion in Cambodia, but fair. The Cambodia is one country of the 10 in ASEAN. But the point is, we cannot have this cohesive body if we take such a condescending view and representing what? Name me which country that have been successful in terms of democratic and humanitarian values and ideals that you can suddenly pounce on one small country in ASEAN. And that's my position. Do I condone all the excesses? No. Do we promote the, freedom and democracy in ASEAN? Yes. Do we believe that this thing can be done fast? No. Even in Malaysia, we have huge problems. I believe strongly in freedom and democratic accountability. But I also understand that there are limits, and we will have to take tough measures when it is absolutely necessary.
Transnational crime in the region is another issue for ASEAN. Vast compounds in Myanmar, Laos and Cambodia host cyber scam operations, defrauding victims around the world of billions of dollars.
I lost over $300,000.
In Cambodia, more than 150,000 people are believed to be involved, many of them trafficked and forced to scam. The United States Institute of Peace estimates the Cambodian scam industry is worth some $12.5 billion a year. Numerous reports have highlighted the involvement of senior members of the Cambodian government. What about transnational crime? What do you propose doing to tackle that?
We have now, within ASEAN, a more, should I say, aggressive or active sort of engagements in terms of cybersecurity, transnational crimes. We thought that within the region, ASEAN, we have some common rules of law so that there's that sort of an understanding. We are working towards that.
What do you do, though, when member countries like Cambodia and the government are complicit in this industry? How do you get them to change?
There are groups within countries that are complicit, but I don't believe that the government is complicit. We have no evidence to support
But there's been numerous international reports looking at the government's...
Well, international reports tend to just highlight on issues involving these smaller developing countries, and they don't bother with the excesses in the richest industrialized economies, which are oppressed in many ways, in trade, in investments, in whatever policy that you may have. I'm not condoning, but we are working. I mean, the financial scam. Cambodia is working with us to try and contain this. I look at the facts. I do look at the perception of the prejudice. No, I'm not necessarily defending. I'm just stating the facts.
So what do you make of the fact that senior members of government in Cambodia, like Lee Yong Pat, who is an advisor to Hun Sen and was sanctioned by the US government at the end of last year for his role in the industry and human trafficking associated with it. We also know that Hun Sen's nephew, Nuon Thoeun, is the part owner of a company that allegedly runs the biggest ever online illicit marketplace tailored to scam operators with transactions totalling $24 billion.
If that basis is true, Cambodia wouldn't be a struggling economy. $24 billion from one facility. It will be a rich country.
But have you...
But I know the position of Cambodia. Now, but what is important is...
But what about
economically,
the Hun Sen family?
If there's evidence to suggest, there are reports to suggest, but what I'm saying is the engagement and the cooperation is unrivaled. So it is difficult for me, from practical experience, to suggest, therefore, that they are not cooperating or they're protecting some of their turf and some of the political elite there.
But in Cambodia, there's massive compounds. These compounds have people who are trafficked from all over the world, who are scamming people from all over the world, and the industry is only growing.
Well,
and the evidence
I must say,
is...
you're really fixated in Cambodia. I think I'll have to look at it again. I will speak to my colleague, Prime Minister. Please make sure that, you know, you're able to respond to this summons.
Exactly.
I'll
well,
do that.
if you could perhaps organise that he might do an interview with us, that we'd really appreciate that, because we do want to put these questions to him.
I'll mention on the record that I'll say you like to travel to Cambodia and interview. I mean, it's good food there, and they're good people. It's a nice place.
Since this interview, We One Group, of which Cambodia's Prime Minister's cousin, Nuon Thoeun, is a major shareholder of at least one key company, is in the process of being banned from the US financial system. The group allegedly laundered some $4 billion worth of illicit proceeds, including hundreds of millions of dollars from scam operations. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim's leadership is fragile.
Enough of corruption!
To stay in power, his Pakatan Harapan coalition relies on his once arch-enemy, the United Malays National Organisation. UMNO ruled the country for more than 60 years, until 2018, when then Prime Minister Najib Razak was thrown out of power over the 1MDB corruption scandal. Jho Low, the alleged mastermind of the scam, remains on the run. Najib was jailed in 2022 for 12 years and faces a raft of other 1MDB-related charges. But last year he received a royal pardon that slashed his sentence, leading Anwar's critics to ask, is he now a victim of political allegiances? Since you became Prime Minister, Najib Razak has had his sentence halved, his fines reduced, and it now looks like he could perhaps spend the rest of his sentence in home detention. On what grounds was Najib pardoned?
You want me to be a dictator or to be a democratic leader of a democratic government? You answer that question. Do you think that I should be a dictator or a leader of a democratic government?
Well, I think you are a leader of a democratic country.
In that case, I should not interfere. The sole prerogative of any form of pardon is by the king, by the then king, in a meeting of the pardons board. Now, was I a member? No. Was my views solicited? No. But did I then advise in terms of the legal complications? Yes. That was it. Now, the perception is that, therefore, under Anwar, the case was halved. But it is not true. You know, if I was to do that, it's better that I withdraw the case.
I think the criticism...
The case is ongoing. I was one of those strong proponents against this financial scandal, 1MDB, and say, you must find out the truth. Yes. But I also know that the billions are stolen by many of the other leaders. 1MDB, one major case is ongoing. It's ongoing. But these people who've been obsessed with only Najib and 1MDB, I do not share. If you listen to them, the only problem in Malaysia is Najib and 1MDB scandal. I am telling you, yes, part of the scandal. It's not just Najib Prime Minister. There were Prime Ministers before him, Minister of Finance before him, after him. Go after them. Why protect some? Why having this obsession?
Because it was the biggest case of kleptocracy.
From what you know, Mary, I happen to be the Prime Minister, I know a bit more. And I'm saying, yes, 1MDB was a big, major financial scandal, but there are many other billions stolen that must be resolved.
And so can you tell us what those scandals...
Yeah, the investigations are ongoing. But my point is, those critics, the critical voices, against Najib, against what's happening, seem to be completely muted when it comes to the past leaders who have been squandering billions. My point is, go. I want this country to save itself from corrupt leaders and teach those who are corrupt a lesson. At least take back the funds and bring back and serve the people.
Why did you, though, personally take Najib's request for a pardon to the Pardons Board?
Because I'm the Prime Minister, I cannot show prejudice against anyone.
Your critics would say, though, that this was a politically driven decision in the sense that you rely on Najib's party, UMNO, to stay in power.
You
Well, this is what people are saying.
You are damned you don't. So finally you do the right thing. What is the right thing? The right given to every single convict in the federal territory to submit a request for review. I have done that. What? To submit a request for a review, not a decision. I was imprisoned first by Manet, many years, oh my dear. Then by Najib. But I said, look, we should go beyond that. I don't harbor that sort of bitterness because I think it is a disease. But the due process continue. The issue, Mary, forgive me, is why this obsession with this man who is now in prison, for God's sake. He is in prison. And those who are just plundering with their billions are still set free. And you don't bother. I mean, not you, I mean the so-called progressive or the critic.
He was the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister and the Chairman of 1MDB. His wife got a $27 million piece of jewellery, and Najib says that that was a pink diamond given to him by a UAE royal member of the royal family.
Thank you.
You know, and that's...
You don't need to convince me of that. I took it up.
But
some of these
know...
issues were taken up by Anwar. What is the deal? But my point is, he's now in prison. And the case is ongoing. Why the obsession about Najib when you have many other cases too? Have we stopped prosecuting? No. Has the case stopped? No. Is the case ongoing? Yes. But okay, move on. What about the rest?
What about
you see,
the
there is
other
also
people
a trick.
who...
I think it's a blatant, nasty trick by some of these crooks who continue to just highlight Najib, so that they are, their case is ignored. Let us run this country and get back for proper governance and rule of law, judicial independence. Let us run this country and not be balked by one obsession.
Just on that matter of people getting away with things, where is Jho Low in all of this?
We are trying, one of the first things that I did when I was Prime Minister, to call up all the agencies and enforcement agencies to do whatever they can, because I think he's quite instrumental, and his testimony will be pivotal in actually closing, at least putting an end to this case.
You said that Malaysia was negotiating with authorities overseas to secure his return and mentioned the process was complicated.
Yes.
Why is it so difficult, given the mountain of evidence against Jho Low, to actually get him back?
Because we don't know where he is. There's a web, of this,
So he's not in China?
No, we can't establish this in China. I mean, seriously, on record. But we suspect some movements. If I say more, they will be more complicated.
Is it a case that certain camps in Malaysia don't want him brought back here?
I believe so. I'm sure. The fact that his return would probably expose more. I don't want to be just acted to consider this as the only issue that the Prime Minister Anwar has to deal with. Anwar has to deal with the issue of governance and rid this country of systemic corruption. and it's a major, arduous battle, and it does not start and end with 1MDB.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Oh,
I appreciate you. Don't want another question?